What's it like touring Shakespeare to the other island?
It is the hardest work you can possibly imagine. It is the most bonding experience you can possibly imagine. And it's absolutely magical. And people lose their tempers and cry and laugh and sing, and we all eat together and we all travel together and we become one big family, and it's quite miraculous.
We're gone for 5 days. We start over on Orcas at Doe Bay, and it's usually as hot as a pistol, and we have to get through that first show, and the playing conditions are not ideal. It's a big flat stage, but you don't have any.
It's set up for music.
Yeah, it's you got to really wing it. And then the next day, we get up and go into town, have breakfast, and then head out to Deer Harbor, where we always had to wait because we had to wait for all these little personal boats to come over because, of course, there's no ferry service over there.
Because we're going to Waldron.
We're going to Waldron, yeah, which is off the grid. And so, you have to hang around and you get to know everybody and you pull out your guitars.
And you get really cross with people who bring too much luggage.
Yeah. And we're taking we're just taking very small amount of stuff, a few lighting instruments and basic costumes and stuff. And then
we leave the rest of the stuff in the car because there's no way to take everything to Waldron.
Right. And we go over there and do that show, and it's all day, and we're out in the field, and people bring us food afterwards and stuff, and then we go to.
But I think we should say how it is on Waldron, because it's.
Well, I was going to. I'll let you get to that. I was just going to say that from there we go to Shaw, and then two nights on Lopez. And what I was going to say is we're away for 5 performances, 5 days, and it seems like you've been on the road for 4 months. So when you get back, everybody is pretty tight.
Yes.
Pretty tight. And looking forward to getting back on the stage because that's home. They know, that's where they rehearsed. They know it. And for the last 5 days, they've been playing in spaces.
Behind bushes, making fast costume trains in full view.
Yeah, making entrances that you have no idea how you're going to get there because it's like 220 yards to where the audience is. You got to try to get over there. And say your line on time. So it's a gas.
Yes, and I think most of all, of course, it wouldn't be half as much fun if the audience didn't enjoy it. But especially everywhere, we have been so well received on tour, and it's just been wonderful because the community, talking of communities, the community on Waldron supported us. They always came to and provided food for a huge after performance party, and people played music and people walked into the sea and
bonfires on the beach.
It was,
and then put us up.
We had to
go stay in various.
Sometimes
places.
we slept on the school floor. Sometimes we had gorgeous little cabins. Sometimes we decided, me especially, to just sleep on the beach.
We had one place in particular that Babs Roddick had over there, and it was on the
water.
North side, right on the water. You were looking at the Canadian ski place off in the distance, and you could go swimming there, and she had tons of places to stay and tents and everything. And so lots of times everyone just stayed there. And it was really cool because we'd, party until 4 a.m.
Some of them would party until 4 a.m.
And then have to get up early and take the boats back to get back to Orcas, to get to the ferry, to get over to Shaw, where we would then play the show on top of a septic system.
Yes. The community center at Shaw is quite nice inside, but inside was not what we were doing. And the parking lot is right there, and there's an L-shaped, very bumpy bit of rather dry grass over a septic system on which somehow we managed to play every show. About one. The last one, we went to the ballpark and we were about 10 miles up in the air while the audience was down below.
So it gave a new meaning to, when you're doing Romeo and Juliet, a rose by any other name would smell as sweet, because that line referred to the stinking sewage
at the Rose Theatre.
The Rose Theatre in London. So
well, it wasn't too stinky. It was just really awkward.
It
was just really awkward. People trying to do monologues on top of green round
plastic conduit things,
septic mounds.
Yeah, so.
Yes, but anyway, and then. But the wonderful thing about doing it on shore was going to Stephanie and Cy's afterwards, Stephanie Buffum and Cy Field's place, which is enormous, and spread out, and everybody had a place, and they treated us like royalty.
They just vacated their house.
Yes.
They went and stayed somewhere else, and just gave us the whole place. And so another huge party ensued.
Yes. But in the old days, they didn't vacate, and they had invited other people over to meet us personally afterwards. And then
Lopez was kind of our favorite in many ways.
Yeah, well, Lopez was much easier. But, actors who had never done this before were all just mind-boggled by every step of the way. And when we told them that the dressing rooms were the winery, that they would have to find a box of wine that was their spot and put all their stuff on it. And of course, each time we went to a different place, we had to do a very quick cue-to-cue rehearsal to establish approximately from where people were coming and to where they would go in order to be ready for the next scene. And because there was so little time, inevitably somebody exited the wrong way sometimes, and then there was great scurrying around behind the vineyard trying to get somebody to the right place or get the costume to the right place.
Right, so you would hear, shit. How do we get over there now?
But the audiences at Lopez were large. It was always full there. They were tremendously receptive, and it's such a beautiful spot to do it. And of course, our first experience there was the Tempest. Was that the second Tempest?
No, we did the first Tempest there. You're talking about the one when.
Yes.
Yeah, lightning was coming out of my head.
Yes. So there's this long view across Lopez Island and a storm in the distance when we were doing the Tempest. And then this lightning, no rain, but lightning. And just as Dan called forth the spirits, he stretched out his arms and the lightning came out of his fingertips. And ever since, Holly B's Bakery gave us free pastries every time we visited because she was so blown away by what had happened.
Yeah, people would stop me and ask me, how did you do that? How did you get the lightning away your head? It's kind of like, when do the whales show up? That kind of. But we had an actor when we were doing Romeo and Juliet. We had an actor from New York.
And this was also on Lopez.
This is also on Lopez. And the Aurora Borealis was happening, and he came running in the house. He thought World War III had just teed off somewhere. He had no idea what he was looking at. It was beautiful. I mean, his things would go up and it would go across this whole sky, and it was so beautiful. And we were in such a great place to see it. But we had to really. He
was terrified. But I think. That's something that I hadn't even considered, having come always from cities. But the amount of natural phenomena that have blessed our productions is just extraordinary. I mean, we've had, the full moon over Othello, and we've had shooting stars over Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, I remember once there was
we've had rain and mist coming up from down in the valley for Macbeth.
Yeah.
And and then we have birds flying overhead. Rehearsal is full of natural things. It's just wonderful.
Animals showing up and foxes coming into the light booth at Roche Harbor. And I was doing Malvolio, and I had doing the letter scene, and this fox came trotting up downstage center right in front of the whole audience. Nobody's watching me anymore. They're watching this fox. And there's only one thing. If, as an actor, you got to know if you're being upstaged. And you can't fight it. So I just went with it. I just did the whole scene to the fox, and he was my audience for that show. Because it looks pretty ridiculous when you're pretending like it's not there. That's happened too. But so it's been pretty cool. But the tour was always fantastic. And by the time we got back, like I said, everybody was really well bonded, ready to go. And
we were also totally exhausted. Yeah. And I learned that we needed at least one full day off when we got back, or people would just fall apart. Yeah. But and I missed doing the tour. We stopped doing it
two
seasons ago. It just was getting too much for, we're getting older.
It was after our last Tempest.
Yes. Yeah.
And I stood there with Helen as the audience was filing out, which I don't normally do. I usually just go with the rest of the actors, and we're awake getting out of our clothes. But I stayed because I knew it was going to be the last time, just to say goodbye to people. And it was very, very moving. You don't sometimes realize what an effect, what an impact you can have on people watching theater. I've had that a number of times in my career where I've been very glib about something, only to realize that somebody
was in your place.
Yeah, well, just to realize that somebody was so affected by what you did because they knew somebody like you were playing,
Yes.
And we tend not to think about that when we're actors. We're just playing a role. But so leaving Lopez was hard.
Yeah,
it was a hard one.
Yes, and I think if we end up knowing when we're going to end Stage Left, we might make one last trip. Maybe do one last tour. It seems mean not to somehow, although they're starting to come over here now, which is nice, and making friends over here. And of course, all our actors stay with people in the community here. And it's a very difficult thing to do, to ask people to put up someone they don't know, and an actor at that, for nearly 3 months through the height of the summer. And many long-term friendships have developed as a result. Mm-hmm. We've had one or two misfits. I think really only two that I can think of over 21 years. That's not too bad.
A couple of marriages.
Yes, we've had
people who didn't know each other before they came
three marriages. Here. Well, one pending. They were supposed to get married this September on Orcas because of the tour, and they had to put it off because of COVID. But yes, we've certainly had romances, lots of those, right. And some permanent and some not. As far as I know, we've had very little antagonism.
We had one production.
We had
a couple of people that were.
They wanted to take over Stage Left, and it didn't work out. Let's just leave it at that.
It was not pleasant.
Yeah, but it's been probably the thing I'm proudest of in my life. Doing Stage Left. I don't think I've accomplished much else, really.
Well, I think it's. I think you've accomplished quite a lot, but.
But I'm not very conservative. I don't go about things like the regular theatre community does, and this suits us just great. Just kind of winging it and making use of what we have naturally here too.